Now, the secret weapon of the Revolutionary Guards has been exposed. At this very moment, Israel struck two of the leaders of Iran's secret electromagnetic project. Today, we will bring you how Israel eliminated Iran's secret weapon, the system that was meant to cause a blackout in Israel. And reports are not stopping at this very moment from the universities in Tehran. The IDF bombed a laboratory producing components for nuclear weapons. We will also expand on this very issue very soon. Iran's oil island is back in the headlines. The Revolutionary Guards with a direct warning to Trump. Iran is threatening. The United States will invade the oil island? We will burn everything. The United States military struck the nuclear facility in Natanz. The Revolutionary Guards issued an ultimatum to Donald Trump. If you invade Kharg Island, the Houthis from Yemen will enter the picture. Trump continues to confuse Iran, signaling calm while sending thousands of additional troops to this region. And new details about Mujtaba Khamenei's medical condition point to brain damage? What do you think? Let me know in the comments if anyone has any idea what's going on with Mujtaba. The Israeli Air Force is striking at the heart of Iran with dozens of targets that attacked in the Tehran area. And in recent days, the forces of the Iranian terror regime have begun launching ballistic missiles towards the territory of the State of Israel from central Iran. This fire from that area is being carried out after the IDF stripped the terror regime of most of its abilities to launch from western Iran. Iran is getting a knife in the back from the Gulf states. We will soon bring you Saudi Arabia's dramatic decisions that changes the rules of the game against Iran. And meanwhile, on Israel's northern front, Hezbollah is taking advantage of the clouds, dozens of launches, and one crushing failure for the terrorist organization. I'm Meir Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are the boots on the ground that bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and everything that is happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. This is day 22 of the Roaring Lion War, or by its American name, Epic Fury. Satellite images reveal that so far, 32 missile bases in Iran, most of them underground, have been hit by American and by Israeli strikes. The strikes were aimed at the entrance tunnels of the bases in order to destroy missile launchers, and 15 of them were destroyed. One expert said that the strikes significantly affected Iran's ability to carry out launches at a high pace. The IDF tried today to eliminate the commander of the Iranian internal security. In addition, the IDF struck the ballistic missile production sites in Iran, and Iran once again tried to shoot down an Israeli fighter jets, and once again failed and discovered the power of the Israeli Air Force. Iran is threatening to activate the Houthis if the United States launches a ground invasion of Kharg Island. The US military struck the nuclear facilities in Natanz. In Tehran, they are emphasizing that no radioactive leak was recorded. Israel eliminated the commander of the Revolutionary Guards in East Azerbaijan. Iran threatens the United States will invade the oil island, and then they will burn everything if that happens. And then Trump is responding to that by saying that Iran's leaders were eliminated. The replacements were eliminated. And the replacements of the replacements were also eliminated. There's no one left to talk to, according to the President of the United States, who is speaking about ending the campaign and easing the oil sanctions, but at the same time, is sending thousands of additional troops to the Middle East. And against the backdrop of the American dilemma between lifting the oil embargo and launching an attack, a military source in Tehran warned against strikes on oil facilities and threatened to destabilize the Bab el-Mandab Strait and the Red Sea, saying that we will burn all of America's facilities in this region. The Revolutionary Guards are saying this. And the United States and Israel have intelligence that indicate that Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader of Iran, is still alive, although He was apparently wounded in the strike at the beginning of this war. When he broke tradition and did not appear in public for the Nawaz holiday, the question intensified: who is actually managing Iran behind the scenes? And this brings us to a huge surprise on day 22 of this war. After 3 weeks of war, a first statement has come from the missing commander of the Quds forces, the man everyone jokes is an Israeli spy. He disappeared after the pager operation, survived the 12-day war, and suddenly, on day 22 of the war, after surviving all the eliminations of the Revolutionary Guards leaders in this round, the first quote from Ismail Qani was published. "The front of truth will continue under Mustafa Khamenei." That's what he wrote. And we will soon bring you all the details about the return of the Quds Force commander. Yesterday, Donald Trump said that he's not interested in a ceasefire. He again attacked NATO. It can help us, but it does not have the courage. In addition, and apparently after heavy threats from the President of the United States, Britain made a sharp policy shift. Britain decided to approve the United States' use of its bases. And Iran responded, "Starmer is endangering British lives." After Britain's shift in their direction, Iran launched missiles towards the Bomber Island. A report that reached us today indicates that Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles towards the island of Diego Garcia, where there is a strategic joint US-British military base. One of the missiles failed, and an interception attempt was made against the second one. Iran confirmed that it tried to strike Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, where the strategic United States base is located, 4,000 kilometers away from Iran. What does that mean? Let me explain. Iranian missiles have a greater range than Tehran previously claimed. To illustrate, such a missile could reach Finland all the way from Iran. Saudi Arabia expanded American access to the Taif base against the backdrop of the escalation with Iran, which gives the United States broader military capability. And meanwhile, it appears that Hezbollah is not only Israel's problem, because in the Gulf states, several Hezbollah terror cells have been uncovered that are trying to spread chaos. In recent days, the Gulf states have been dealing with cells of the Lebanese terrorist organization that were exposed in Kuwait and the Emiratis, while at the same time, fears are growing over the pro-Iranian militias in Iraq. The Lebanese Foreign Ministry condemned the plot and promised to help punish those responsible. According to a Reuters report, Iran sent dozens of officers to Lebanon to rebuild Hezbollah after the heavy blow it suffered from Israel. The terror organization has shifted to a more decentralized structure and is preparing for renewed confrontation. In addition, Iran is threatening that the flip-flop proxy, the Houthis in the Red Sea, will join this war. Data that were revealed point to a cynical and crude move by the Houthis in Yemen. They kidnap helpless African refugees and send them to their deaths as fighters. We will soon bring you all the details, and today I want to share with you a moment that shows the misery and the despair in Iran. Iran's president tried to deliver a holiday greeting and became a joke on the internet. On Iranian social media, people mocked the message of Iran's president, who was filmed in what looked like an improvised room with walls covered in blankets and a doll on the table. Critics claim that the video projected fear, weakness, and governmental embarrassment. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and we are the boots on the ground that bring you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel. And this is day 21 of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just a second before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. If this is the first time that you are watching Boots on the Ground on our YouTube channel, TBN Israel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, share this video with a friend, and leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you want to see this war through our eyes, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms so you can get our perspective on what's happening in Israel and what it's like to live in this war under all these attacks. So, our senior Middle East correspondent, Mati Shoshani, at this very moment, there has been a direct hit on a residential building in Dimona, in Israel South, with 23 wounded and one child that was seriously injured. This is an Iranian cluster missile that was launched. And we are seeing Iran fire fewer missiles in more barrages using unconventional weapons. What does that mean about the big picture in this war? The shift from strong direct missiles with one big warhead to this cluster bombs of 5-kilogram warheads in 20 separate missiles or something like that.
So first of all, Shavua Tov Yael, good week, which is what we say in Israel when the Shabbat ends on Saturday. To your point, yes, the Iranians have made a dramatic switch and transition from what was the traditional conventional big warheads. We're talking 500 kilos or more. 500 kilos is over 1,000 pounds that are supposed to cause dramatic, substantial destruction, to cluster munitions. Cluster munitions, by the way, which is let's call it a arcane and low-tech solution that they've been using in Hamas technology. So this is not a high-tech, not a sophisticated methodology. What it does is, the only thing it really does is it allows them to detonate before interception. So their big problem is that Israel intercepts the majority of their missiles. This they can sort of release high up, and this shall allow the cluster bombs to fall to the ground. They're small. From what we've seen so far, we're talking 2, 3, 4 kilos of explosive per cluster. Let's call it a big sphere or a big chunk that explodes. It blows up. And it can create a hole in the asphalt. It can create a hole in the wall, but it's not blowing up entire buildings. There's two pictures that are happening here right now. One, they've been using cluster munitions because they cause more fear to the civilian population, and rightly so, because it's harder to intercept and harder to really catch all of them. But there's another element here. They've been really focusing their, let's call it their fire on Israel, on specific areas within the country. You mentioned Dimona. Dimona is the known location of Israel's possible, according to foreign press, nuclear facility. We can't comment on whether or not it exists, but let's say there's been a lot of discussion on the topic. So much of their fire over the weekend was focused on the Dimona area. Some of it hit open spaces, some of it hit, as you mentioned, a residential area, injuring 51 people earlier today. One of them, a child, severely injured. So that's one thing. And then the second part is really the technology part of it, is what we're seeing here is the Iranians not working in a systematic, we're going after an international or national facility. It's not big buildings. It's not one, key facility. It's trying to just bombard an area that hopefully has a key facility in it. We saw it earlier this weekend in Haifa, where there was very minimal damage to one of the oil refineries in the Haifa port. And we're seeing it today, Saturday, in Dimona, southern Israel, where there's a nuclear research facility that might or might not have, let's call it nuclear abilities that are related to Israel's possibly existent nuclear program. I don't know how vaguely I'm supposed to say this. Anyway, so that's the transition. That's the transition, Yair. And just to make one last thing clear is the Iranians have revealed over the last couple of days that the way they're firing the ballistic missiles isn't through the traditional command and control chain. It's not, the chief of staff saying, let's target these targets in Israel, but rather they divvied up the territory of Iran to about 31 different commands, each with a regional commander that controls the ballistic launches from that area. And they have, from what we can understand, a predetermined list of targets. And when they have the chance and when they think they can get away with it without being struck from the air, which is not often, they go out, they bring out a launcher, and they try to get a couple missiles out towards Israel or towards the Gulf states. So we're seeing sort of a shift in their tactics to try to get more missiles out, and another shift in the fact that they're using cluster bombs and not large warheads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, Mati. And I think there was a significant hit in the last few days in the old city of Jerusalem, only a few hundred meters away from the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So basically, the Ayatollah regime almost took out the Al-Aqsa Mosque with one of their rockets.
Well, I think for them it's a win-win, Yael. Because you know that if one of them hit the Al-Aqsa Mosque, you know exactly what they would have said. It was a Jewish conspiracy.
That Israel
they would have
is
said,
just blaming the Iranians.
yeah, it's a Jewish conspiracy to destroy Al-Aqsa. Clearly, it's not the Iranians. Even if it would have said on it, in Farsi, sent by the Ayatollah, still they would blame Israel for doing it. But yeah, I mean, I have friends who live in the old city. Just yesterday, I was talking to them. They heard a loud explosion in the old city. I'm not going to say exactly where it was, but it's several hundred yards from the Temple Mount. Not very far. I mean, when you understand the topography, a couple angles off, and it would have struck in the courtyard of the Temple Mount. But yeah, these clusters are hitting various places around the country. They don't cause a substantial amount of damage, but they do cause a lot of a big scare for the people. And again, no one likes explosives coming down from the sky. I'd add one more thing. Is this isn't the first time, by the way, the munitions have hit near the Temple Mount. It's the second time in a week. And if ever there was a doubt about the fact that this is not purely a religious war, it's more motivated by the Iranian regime, strong desire to stay in power, you can understand why they don't care to hit holy sites. They don't care to bomb their neighbors. They don't even care to bomb their allies. I mean, the Qataris, the Omanis, people that have been, the ones helping them in negotiations, they've been bombing them. These are people without honor, without dignity, without values as the way we understand them in the Judeo-Christian world. They're willing to do anything, including hurt their friends and allies, to stay in power. That's who we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think this is something that you might already know, but I just saw a post by a friend, Mansour Ashkar. You remember this guy, right? So he just commented on a video seeing an Iranian missile that opened into a 20 missiles, meaning the cluster bomb, and then all these small missiles basically just evaporated in the air without a Iron Dome battery launching a missile against each one of them. And he's claiming that this is the next level use of the laser beam against the small munitions of the cluster bombs. What do you have to say about that?
I haven't seen the video. I don't think that's possible unless its capabilities are far greater than what we've previously known. I'm choosing my words carefully. From what we know, and I interviewed in person the man behind the system, unless this is in very low altitude, and I'm really thinking through the technical aspect here, the way Iron Beam is supposed to work, it's supposed to work against small munitions, and since it's a focused energy beam, it's laser, it needs to heat up the target, and that takes, well, let's say from a fraction of a second to a couple seconds where it's tracking the target till the point that it heats up or explodes, or both. So having a combination of many of them, dozens in the air, blowing up at once.
It wasn't at once, Martin. I'll send you the video, but it wasn't at once. It was one after the other, one after the other.
Maybe I'd say this differently. Here's what we know. Iron Beam was deployed before it was made public. It actually was operational for a good 6 months in northern Israel, knocking down drones and rockets from Hezbollah. Time and time again before it was made public that it was operational. There's another system that we know that works, which is the airborne version of it, developed by Elbit Systems, that we also know works. Is it already deployed? We're not entirely sure. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, it is possible that there's a combination of systems, and the conditions were just right to intercept a bunch of them in quick succession, one after the other. From what we've seen and in videos that we can't show on the screen, they're able to acquire targets very quickly and transition between targets very quickly. And given the very small size of these clusters, yes, it does stand to reason that we would be able to intercept a bunch of them one after the other. Again, I haven't seen the video and I haven't seen any official comment on this topic, so it's hard for me to say. But yes, we've deployed a lot of new technologies, and this war is changing as we see it, and the next war is going to be, I hope, even better for us, for Israel and for the allies of Israel.
Yeah. Just before we went on this live, we discussed the new developments, basically the fact that the Iranians were able to launch ballistic missiles to a distance of 4,000 kilometers. I don't know how much that is in miles, but it basically means that Iran can reach Finland with their ballistic missiles now. That's almost double the length that we thought that they had before today. How does that change? I mean, this war and the fact that they are able to even execute and target the Diego Garcia Island after, what is it, 22 days of being bombarded. What does that mean? Yeah.
There's two big things, and you're sort of pointing towards it, Yael. Two big questions that are on the table here. What more does Iran have that we don't know about? And how much longer can they continue fighting? And the what more do they have is a really good question. I've been on a deep dive over the weekend into some of the technologies they've been developing. One, I want to say this to people. Iran is not a weak adversary. They're also not a country that doesn't know how to plan. They've spent years prepping for this war. They've thought about how they're going to close the Straits of Hormuz. They've developed, for instance, micro subs. We're talking 28, 29 meters, so let's say 100 feet long subs, smaller subs that can operate in the shallow waters of the Strait of Hormuz and knock out the tankers. So they're not specifically for military applications, but they are for disrupting trade. They've developed, probably have about 10 of them operational right now. So we know they have that. We know they have ballistic missiles with a longer reach than what was previously expected. And I want to say this, Yael, this is not something that happens often in third world countries, such as Iran, or second world countries, such as Iran. In Israel's case, sometimes, in the United States case, sometimes we'll publish the actual range of munitions. We'll say at least this far, but not the full range, not the full capability. For a country like Iran that's been developing these kind of missiles, it doesn't happen often where a munition has, the stated range was a bit over 2,000 kilometers, which is like 1,300 miles, give or take. We're talking almost double that. So give or take 2,600 miles of range for a ballistic missile, which is much farther than we expected previously. Yes, it's a showcase of their ability. I would dare say that they probably don't have many more of these ballistic missiles, if anything. And this launch today, or it was several launches, I believe, was done to be a show of force and show of ability to sort of threaten the other countries. And then the last part here is the duration, Yael. I think in everyone's mind, we don't know what the Iranians really have as far as the numbers that are remaining and the manpower that remains, etc. But you also don't know how long they're willing to keep fighting. That really puts a question mark in the back of everyone's mind of how much longer can we allow this squeeze to continue in the Strait of Hormuz? What more can the U.S. and Israel do without an international coalition to really stop the Iranians and allow global trade to go back to normal? I'd say one last thought on what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. There have been leaks that say that the straits are not actually fully closed, they're just mostly closed, because some of the close allies of the Iranians have been permitted, sort of off the record by the Iranian regime, to move their oil tankers through the straits. So it's interesting you're seeing that development, because finances in the end really are a global game, where Iran is allowing the good word, they're not attacking their allies, so the Chinese, the Indians, and several other countries, not attacking their vessels as they travel through the strait.
Well, just before we talked, we got on this live, we also talked about a statement that came out by the Israeli defense minister, the chief of staff of the IDF, stating that looks like even through Passover, we will need to fight off incoming missiles. What's your assessment on this?
Yeah, we were talking about it before because it's a bit on the depressing side, if I'm being honest. Now, Passover is the first week of April. It's the beginning of April, and it runs for a week. And Eyal Zamir, our chief of staff, who's highly esteemed individual in Israel, professionally and on a military level, he said, essentially, I want us all to be on the same page. We're going to be fighting this type of war also through Passover. So that's the beginning of April. That's several weeks away. At least several more weeks of intense fighting, several more weeks of intense bombing, and sadly for the Israeli population, also several more weeks of both a squeeze on the financial side in the Straits of Hormuz, but also additional sort of like this daily, nuisance of the ballistic missiles being launched at Israeli population. So several more weeks of that, and then the big question in the back of everyone's mind is what happens after that? When does the Strait of Hormuz open? When can we, the United States, Israel, when will there be like a official or even non-official victory over Iran? And the biggest hope, the biggest question is, when is the regime knocked down? When is the regime replaced? There's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces here. I continue to hope and to pray for our leadership to be just, godly wise, inspired by God in their wisdom to really do the right thing to oppose this evil enemy.
Okay, I think last question. Are the Houthis going to join this war or not? Because there's been threats, ongoing threats by them, and then by Iran to activate them if the United States will do something to Hormuz, will do something to Kharg Island. Is this a valid threat or just a vague threat? Are they really capable of launching massive attacks and harming the US or Israel?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid threat. We've seen in the past that the Houthis are willing to, to essentially do everything, any type of violence, any type of attack, to promote the agenda of anti-Israel, anti-USA, even at times it seems beyond what the Iranian regime wants or publicly wants. And in this case, we've seen Iran several times in this last conflict hold back on some of their, let's call it their proxy friends until the moment that they really needed them. For instance, they didn't engage Hezbollah fully into this conflict until the war was very clearly already beat in the dramatic sense of removing the leadership of Iran. They haven't yet engaged the Houthis. Again, there's other contributing factors here where the Houthis are, they've been struck dramatically in the last 12 months by U.S. forces and by Israel. But still, the Houthis, much like Iranian control right now, they're not one, hierarchy of military control. They're a bunch of clan, let's call it warlords, that have at their disposal munitions and ballistic missiles to use, or possibly also to be disruptors of maritime trade. And one of the things that's been floated or discussed several times is that even if the Straits of Hormuz are, fully occupied by a military presence that allows ships to travel through, one, the Iranian coastline is very, very long on the sea. Two, even if they make it past the Iranian, let's call it waters of influence, all the way around, they could still be struck by Houthi forces. So yeah, I believe this is valid. I believe the Houthis need to be kept at bay. And I believe this war will be determined when safe naval passage is allowed, all the way through the Strait of Hormuz, and then of course through the Red Sea. We need to see that happen. My guess is, Yael, a week after this war is over, you're going to start hearing ideas float about we're going to build a pipeline that can circumnavigate the naval trade route and go straight across the land through Israel, likely Jordan, Israel, all the way to the Mediterranean Ocean. To get past, they need to go by Iran and go by the Houthis. I'd say this, it should have happened many years ago, but there's going to be a push to create that solution sometime in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Mati. Hope you have a great beginning of the week.
Thank you, Yael.
And to all of you that are joining us right now, we are TBN Israel, and we report every single day since this war started, basically since October 7th. So if you want to stay up to date with what's happening in Israel, in the Middle East, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, let us know where you're watching from, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Now, all across Israel, families are running to bomb shelters. Yeah, because we're under attack by multiple Iranian missiles every single day, and sometimes by Hezbollah missiles from Lebanon. Children are hearing the sirens instead of the school bells. Soldiers are leaving their homes to defend our nation. This is real. This is happening all over the country. And Israel needs all of us right now. The Bible is calling us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Today, that calling is urgent. It requires bold, faithful prayer. And it requires also action. Israel must now and know that millions of Christians around the world are standing with all of us. Yes, not just in words, but in action. That's why we at TBN Israel are asking you to step up to stand with Israel. Your gift helps bring the truth from the ground in Israel to millions of people around the world. It brings spiritual encouragement to believers. And also, it provides real support in a time of war. And we want to hear from you. So send us your prayers at standwithisrael@tbn.tv. We read every single one. Your prayers give us strength to keep doing what we do. And if you want to support us, help us create more content, do more live coverage of what's happening in Israel so that you will know the truth, go to tbn.org/standwithisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/standwithisrael, or call 800-772-5040. Pray with us, stand with Israel, and give as generously as you can. Again, without you, we will not be able to give you these reports, boots on the ground, and everything that's happening from Israel. So if you want to support our work, go to tbn.org/standwithisrael. You can also call 800-772-5040 and show Israel that we are not alone. Now back to Tehran. In the heart of Iran, amidst a sequence of precise strikes, Israel hit two scientists overnight who are defined as leading figures in Iran's secret electromagnetic project. I'm not joking, electromagnetic project. And at the same time, a component production laboratory was also attacked at the Malek Ashtar University, which according to the IDF was used to develop components for nuclear weapons and also other means of warfare. Hours later, more reports continued to come in about additional strikes in Tehran, damage to ballistic missile production sites in western Iran, and a combined effort to deepen the blow at the heart of the regime's research, production, and firepower systems. The question now is not only what was destroyed overnight, but whether Israel and the United States have already moved from the stage of military attrition to the stage of systematically dismantling Iran's deterrence mechanisms. This is day 22 of the Roaring Lion War, or by its American name, Epic Fury. And this night illustrates the new phase of the campaign very clearly. If in the early days the goal was to strike the command centers, the air defenses, and the nuclear program, now the moves appear deeper, more precise, and aimed at what allows the regime to survive a long war. Launchers, laboratories, headquarters, production infrastructure, and the chain of command that connects all of them. The broader picture emerges from the last 24 hours is clear. Israel is striking in Tehran. The United States is operating in Natanz, and the campaign is no longer moving only on the axis of response and counter-response, but on an axis of dismantling capabilities. One of the most significant moves in the last 24 hours, the whole period, is the return of the electromagnetic project. According to the reports that are cleared for publication, Israel identified in recent days an Iranian attempt to renew the project that had already been damaged earlier in the operation, and for several days tracked two of its central scientists before they were struck. The significance here is major. If this is indeed a system intended to hit the infrastructure, blackout areas, or disrupt critical systems, then this is not just another scientific target, but another layer of strategic threat that Israel is seeking to remove before it matures. Therefore, the opening of day 22 is not only about another targeted killings, but about an effort to cut off a future capability before it moves from the laboratory to the battlefield. That same night, the IDF also struck the Malek Ashtar University site in Tehran, and according to the IDF spokesperson's statement, the site was used by military industries and the regime's ballistic missile array to develop components for nuclear weapons and other means of warfare. And the infrastructure that was attacked was a component production laboratory. This is an important detail because it places the strike at a very precise point on the map, not another general message against the nuclear program, but a focused hit on the interface between research, production, and the defensive industry. In other words, those in Israel who are now building the target bank are looking not only at enrichment sites, but at the entire technological supply chain that surrounds them. And from there, the story continues to Natanz. In Iran, they confirmed that the center enrichment facility was attacked again this morning, and at the same time emphasized that no raise in the radiation level was recorded. According to reports, an IDF source clarified that the strikes in Natanz are being carried out by the United States military without direct IDF involvement, and that 4 underground systems were attacked by heavy American bombers. The International Atomic Energy Agency also said that no increase in the radiation level had been identified. This is a dramatic detail for 2 reasons. First, Washington is continuing to operate directly against the heart of the nuclear program. Second, it is doing so in a way that once again focuses on deep underground infrastructure and not only on what is visible above ground. And when you connect Natanz and the broader satellite picture, you understand how much the pressure on Israel's missile systems has grown. An investigation broadcast on the basis of satellite imagery shown that 32 missile bases in Iran, most of them underground, were hit in an Israeli and American strikes. And according to the findings, the strikes were aimed mainly at tunnel entrances, junctions, and also above ground structures in order to paralyze the ability to move launchers out of the missile cities. At least 15 launchers were destroyed, and the assessment is that this damage has already significantly affected Iran's ability to launch at high pace. This also fits well with additional data pointing to a sharp drop in the scale of Iranian missile launchers since this war began. That is also the reason that the defense establishment is describing a change in the Iranian firing pattern. In recent days, more missiles have been launched from central Iran after a large part of capabilities in the west of the country was worn down. In other words, the regime has not stopped launching, but it is being pushed backward geographically and is required to use deeper, more complex, and less convenient spaces of operation. Add to that the report that Iran again tried to shoot down an Israeli fighter jet and failed, along with continuing Israeli efforts to strike production, storage, and launch sites for ballistic missiles, and you get a picture of a war in which each sortie is no longer measured only by the number of the strikes, but by the ability to disrupt the Iranian system from within. And within this sequence, another human target also appeared. Arab reports spoke of the elimination of the Revolutionary Guards commander in East Azerbaijan province, Kader Azarian, and at the same time of an attempt to hit the Iranian police commander, Ahmed Raza Dahahan. And over the past week, a line of eliminations has also been recorded at the top of the regime, including Basij commanders and other senior officials, and the culminative effect is already visible. Less visible command, fewer public appearances, and more question marks around who is really giving the orders in Tehran. And this brings us back to the one of the great mysteries of day 22. Mujtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader. According to American and Israeli reports, there is intelligence indicating that he is still alive, but his physical condition and functioning are unclear. The fact that he did not appear in public, even on Nowruz, contrary to tradition, deepens the fog. In American intelligence, they are trying to understand whether he is in fact managing the campaign or whether it is the Revolutionary Guards who are actually filling the vacuum. In Israel, the assessment is that this vacuum only deepened after the elimination of Ali Larijani, and that Iran is currently operating under a regime of command that is far more decentralized, covert, and frightened. Even the video of President Masoud Pezeshkian, filmed in a space that looked improvised, became in the last 24 hours a symbol of that same governmental embarrassment. On Iranian social media, people mocked the setting, the table, the blankets on the walls, and the sense of hiding. A regime does not collapse because of one video, but that video gave the Iranian public a picture that did not project control, but actually pressure. And within this uncertainty, a name that had almost disappeared from the screen suddenly appeared again, Ismail Qani. After 3 weeks of war, a first statement attributed to the commander of the Quds forces was published, in which he promised that the front of truth would continue under Mujtaba Khamenei. This was not a video, not a public appearance, and not footage from the field, but only a written message. So instead of restoring stability, that statement mainly served as a reminder of how deeply the regime has entered a state in which even when it tries to prove it is still alive, it is still doing so from the shadows. And if Tehran is confused from within, the external arena is only widening. In a highly unusual move, Iran launched 2 ballistic missiles towards the joint US-British base at Diego Garcia, which is about 4,000 kilometers away. According to reports, one of the missiles failed or fell on the way, and at the second missile, an American SM-3 interceptor was launched. The base was not hit, but the very launch changes the picture. It signals that Iran has an operational capability to reach ranges much further than it had previously shown, or at least a willingness to expose such a capacity during this wartime. Diego Garcia is not just another base. It is a strategic American-British asset in the heart of the Indian Ocean, a base that has served the United States from the Vietnam War through Afghanistan and Iraq, and where B-2 bombers have also been stationed. When Iran fires here, there is not only a testing range, it is a testing of a message. This is exactly where the threat to Kharg Island, Iran's oil island, is connecting. In Tehran, they are warning that if the United States moves from naval and air action to a ground move or an invasion of the island, the response will be unprecedented. In Iranian messaging, the same axis appeared again. Bab el-Mandeb, the Red Sea, energy facilities in the Gulf, and also activation of the Houthis. In other words, from the regime's point of view, Kharg is not only an oil terminal, but a red line from which several arenas can be ignited all at once. And yet, behind these threats stands the American dilemma as well. On the one hand, Washington wants to restore stability to the energy markets and open Hormuz. On the other hand, any strike on Kharg may ignite exactly what it wants to prevent. So, if you're standing with us inside this campaign, day after day, this is exactly the moment to like, share, and subscribe, because here at TBN Israel, we are sharing the truth of this war so that you will know how to pray for the situation. So, how to help us? Hit the subscribe button, share this with a friend, leave a comment, let us know where you're watching this from. And now, we return to the broader picture, because while Trump speaks about the possibility of reducing the military effort, he's also continuing to leave almost every other option on the table. The American president said that the United States is very close to achieving its goals, detailed these goals: damage to the missile capabilities, destruction of the defensive industry, elimination of the Navy and the Air Forces, prevention of nuclear capability, and at the same time signaled that he's not seeking a ceasefire. And in the same breath, Britain shifted policy and approved the United States the use of its bases for operations related to protecting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran rushed to threaten London, and then, soon afterward, came the missile fire towards Diego Garcia. In other words, behind the language of calm, there is also in practice a broader deployment, deeper coordination, and a wider room for action for the American military. And against this background, Saudi Arabia also moved. Reports from the region indicate that Riyadh expanded American access to the Taif base. That is a step that increases the American logistical depth against Iran, especially in the Red Sea and the Hormuz area. And at the same time, Bahrain joined an international declaration for readiness to contribute to safe passage in the Strait of Hormuz. That may sound technical, but it is a strategic signal. More Gulf states are today willing to be seen as partners in the efforts to stop Iran at sea, even if they are still careful not to appear as if they are officially being dragged into a total war. And what is happening on the proxy front? Here the picture is double. On the one hand, Tehran is openly threatening to activate the Houthis if the United States invades Kharg Island. On the other hand, even without such an invasion, it has already been exposed how deep their cynical exploitation in Yemen runs. And according to the published data that we have, thousands of African migrants are forcibly recruited or exploited as soldiers on the Houthi fronts. This is alongside weapons smuggling and criminal activities. This is a reminder that when Iran threatens to bring the Houthis into the picture, it means an organization that is already operating with cruelty, that is a flexible organization, and it is a decentralized method that can harm the global trade and cause terrorism attacks in Israel and also attacks against the US bases in this region. And in Lebanon, meanwhile, Hezbollah tried to exploit the stormy weather here in Israel and the low cloud cover to increase the pace of fire towards the northern communities. So dozens of rockets, missiles, and drones were launched toward Kiryat Shmona, toward Tzfat, Rosh Pina, Hatzor, and the Western Galilee area, all communities in Israel, also including the Golan Heights. But here too, a crushing failure for the organization was recorded. 5 drones launched under the cover of the clouds were intercepted. After the IDF changed the deployment of its detection systems and learned better the flight routes that Hezbollah likes to exploit, valleys, streams, and terrain that is around the Tyre area. The meaning is very simple. Hezbollah is still trying, but Israel is already adapting even to its new methods of hiding the drones. And behind the scenes, Hezbollah is also continuing its Iranian rebuilding process. According to reports, about 100 Iranian officers were sent to Lebanon after the ceasefire of November 2024 in order to rebuild the organization's chain of command. Instead of a heavy hierarchy, a decentralized model of small units, district compartmentalizations, and joint planning with Revolutionary Guards advisors had been built. That is why, even as the organization takes blows, it still remains dangerous, not because it has returned to its old strength, but because it is adapting. And this day proves that even alongside the campaign in Iran, Israel is not easing the pressure, not in Lebanon, not in Beirut, and not in southern Lebanon, where Division 36 and 91 continue ground operations against infrastructure, against terrorists, against weapons depot. And what connects all of these areas together is not only the fire, but the sea. Hormuz, Bab el-Mandab, the Red Sea, Diego Garcia, Kharg, Taif, Bahrain. That is why both the American-Israeli strike on the missile cities and the direct strike on Natanz and the missile launches towards the Indian Ocean are all part of the same struggle over range, over depth, and over freedom of action. Iran is trying to prove that it can still threaten Israel, can still threaten the American bases and the Gulf and also Europe. Israel and the United States are trying to prove that they can hit Iran not only in the missiles themselves, but in the factories, in the laboratories, in the tunnels, the headquarters, and the person who runs it all. And this evening ends with the Iranian regime still standing, but more exposed, more decentralized, and more pressured than it was a week ago. So, thank you so much for joining us again. We are TBN Israel, and if you want to help us share the truth, hit the subscribe button, share a friend, and we are here together to help you know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So, again, if you want to look at this war through our eyes, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms, and make sure that you keep praying for this situation. And when you do, pray for our leaders. Make sure that they have the wisdom, the godly wisdom to make the right choices in this very complex situation. Pray for our soldiers, our servicemen, the pilots, the aircraft personnel, the sailors, and every special forces units that are on the ground in the Middle East, inside Iran, and all over this region. Pray for the children, that need to run to bomb shelters in Israel. Pray for our team at TBN Israel that are working nonstop despite the missiles on our heads. And above all, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem and for the people of Iran.